Hello, my name is Annette DeLu, and you are listening to The Heart of You. This is episode 48, and today we are speaking with Sonia Choquette. Sonia is a New York Times bestselling author of The Answer is Simple, Trust Your Vibes, and 24 other internationally best-selling books about intuitive awakening, personal and creative growth, and the transformational leadership capabilities that reside within us all. Sonia, thank you so much for taking the time today. I'm so happy that you were able to join me today.
Oh, Annette, I'm so excited to be with you. It's my pleasure and my favorite conversation.
How I like to start off each episode is by asking, what is your spiritual awakening journey? What is your story? How did you first come to really get to know your intuition?
Well, I kind of come at this in a backward way. I grew up in an intuitive family. My awakening was when I started school. What I realized was that what was perfectly natural and evident to me, my intuition, was not as evident and natural to others.
Oh, yeah.
That was my shock. I never had oh my God, I'm intuitive. It's like I would never have an, oh my God, I can see.
Mm-hmm.
It was always part of my experience. And that's because I grew up in a family, one of seven, around a very intuitive matriarchal mother who taught us from the beginning that we had six senses and that our intuition was the most important one to pay attention to. So
that's so important. Wow, that's great.
It's crucial. My mother, when I was growing up, I would ask her, can I do this or should I do that? And she would always answer, before I answer, what does your spirit say? What does your inner self say? Because that's the most important voice of all. And that was my gift, is being given that empowerment as a child. Even in my family, our inner voice transcended authority, even hers. And teachers and others, I was never encouraged to follow an outer guide. And I learned very early in life that was so central to my security and well-being. But when I saw others not following that, I considered it the worst possible handicap they could have.
Yeah.
My mother was deaf. So I grew up with a mother who already had a disability, but her vibes more than compensated for it. So I really also learned we could lose an outer sense and be okay, but to lose your inner sense is a tremendous, tremendous setback. You can lose yourself. My awakening was, I would say, around 12.
Okay.
I was asked by the police to do some police work. Now that just flattered me to no end, and I was completely unequipped emotionally for this. It was a double murder. And
how old were you?
12.
So that's when you were 12.
That was when I was 12. I had already developed a reputation. So I was totally traumatized because I should never have been in that mess.
Right.
However, it was a bit of initiation because here was this absolutely decimated family looking to me for guidance. It was so awful, but I made a decision that I would learn everything I could and do everything I could, learn and leave no stone unturned to learn all about intuition so that should people come to me for guidance, I would be safe and reliable and capable of helping them. And so that's when I set my life's mission, my devotion to demystifying intuition. When I was 12, it was very much considered woo-woo and Twilight Zone and dismissible. So I just devoted myself to learning everything to dismantle these biases and empower people because this family was so devastated. And for me, it was like, this is what happens when you get lost and you deviate off the track of your inner compass. And so I'd say that was my moment of awakening, of taking my skills seriously, the impact I have on others using them, and the impact that our inner guidance has on our lives and the terrible loss that it causes when we lose it. So for me, the awakening was really more of a call to to investigate at the deepest level what the biases around intuition were, because to me, it was such a disempowerment that people would distance from their inner guidance when it's as natural as our breathing.
Yeah.
That really was my call to action. And I've not abandoned it ever since.
Yeah, and the thing is that you talk about the senses and how you can lose any of the senses except for if you lose that inner sense, it's detrimental. And yet that is the one sense that so many people have completely just turned off or tuned out of, right?
They've either had it turned off, they've been indoctrinated out of it, they've been conditioned to ignore it. But I think it's the root of every source of unhappiness that humans suffer, both personally and what we inflict on others.
Yeah.
Because your inner compass, your intuition, is the voice of your divine spirit.
Yeah.
The transcendent, fearless part of you. And without it, it's like being lost in the jungle at night without a flashlight. It's life is
100%.
dangerous.
Yeah.
It's dangerous. It's like, how can you navigate life without your inner light on and not be threatened?
Yeah.
So you make bad decisions, you get pulled off track, you abandon yourself, you give other people your power, you shut down, you drug yourself, try to feel better. I mean, it just sets you on a whole spiral of disaster to not be guided from within.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I find is difficult to connect with my intuition is when I'm in those sort of lower energies. If you're in the fear energy, if you're in any sort of place where you're panicking or anything like that, it is actually, in fact, the hardest time to connect to your intuition.
You're
So,
right.
what would you recommend for people as a practice? I mean, obviously there are a lot of different practices people can do, but what would you recommend to be able to connect during those times?
I'm very practical. I have spent a half a century teaching people how to get to their intuition in the most direct way. So I'm going to give you a tool that
Okay.
will just help you get through that. It's not fear that disconnects you from intuition, it's hiding fear. So,
Yeah.
what I say when you want to get to your intuition is first start naming all the things you're afraid of out loud.
Okay.
I'm afraid of being wrong. I'm afraid I'll make a mistake. I'm afraid I'll be alone. I'm afraid this will cost me money. I'm physically afraid. Just and every three after you name three things, stop, take a breath, and look at something right in front of you and name it.
Okay.
There's the floor, there's the wall, there's the tree, whatever. Because this brings you out of your fear mind and into the body and into the present moment. I call this tool emptying the garbage. Then take three more things out of the garbage. I'm afraid I'm getting old. I'm afraid I'm unlovable. I'm afraid I'm being cheated on, whatever. Then stop again, take a breath. When you cannot name any more fear, breathe in, let out a sigh. Ah. I call this sliding home. You slide into your heart space. Put your hand on your heart and then you fill in the blank. My spirit says, or my intuition says, and answer out loud, and it'll come straight out.
Beautiful. You know what? It's funny when you were mentioning identifying all of those things that scare you or that you're fearful of. I was instantly brought to the song from Sound of Music. So, and I forgot the name of the song at the moment, but it's the raindrops on roses, whiskers on kittens. So
Yeah,
it's
these are
that
a few of my favorite things.
my favorite things. That's the one. Yes. So it's literally the song is literally going through the fears that they were having and then actually refocusing on something
Yeah, that they love.
that they love. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
this tool changes the channel
Yeah.
because what I've noticed is that the planet runs on fear.
Mhm.
So it's not just our fear, we entrain with the generic fear
Yeah.
of the unconscious self. So when we get into a fear state, we get into a frequency that amplifies. So the only way is to name it is to and get out of it is to actually it's when we hide it that where it consumes us. When we externalize it by naming the things you're afraid of out loud, you liberate yourself. You
Yeah.
open and by naming things out loud, you open the throat chakra, you breathe into the heart chakra with the sigh. And then you find your mind goes quiet and you actually can feel and sense your inner guidance. And then you put your hand on your heart and name it out loud. But I also tell people you don't have to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
This is the other thing that stops people. It's like, well, I don't know if I want to follow my intuition. And I say, fair. It is a courageous choice. So at least name it, then decide.
Right.
Don't make it all one. Don't mush it all into one. Break it down. My intuition says, and then you get to choose if I'm going to listen to it or not. But here's what happens. When your intuition is allowed to express itself, your body relaxes.
Mm-hmm.
Your mind goes quiet and your body relaxes and you feel relieved.
So if you, let's say, decide not to follow your intuition at any given moment, do you find that your intuition will get louder as it moves on if it's sort of the correct direction or sort of the right direction for you to go in?
It depends, because I have noticed we have 3 intuitive channels.
Okay.
What I call, and that for simplicity's sake, it's red light intuition, yellow light intuition, and green light intuition. Red light is our gut intuition that protects our safety. That will get louder because it's our strongest instinct. It's the instinct for survival.
Yeah.
So when we ignore it, it gets louder, trying to keep us alive or safe. Yellow light intuition is pause. It's like this is too soon to tell. The information isn't gathered enough. Things are still in flux. We can ignore that, push ahead, not pause, feel like we have to, our anxiety causes us to go ahead and act, and then we could regret it. And green light intuition is the one I think I've observed actually is most easily drowned out. Because that's the intuition that says, trust yourself, go for it, believe in what you feel, and where most of the outer world will challenge you. Who do you think you are? That's crazy. What do you mean? What makes you do that? That's nuts. So that's the one that's most beneficial to us living authentic lives and the one most easily drowned out if we ignore it or shop it around and ask other people for their approval.
The shopping around. So that's something that is always difficult for me because when I have an intuition that, let's say, for example, it is my decision. There are often times when I get the intuition that actually, you have 3 or 4 choices and any of them would be good, right? You can choose whatever is going to make you the happiest. And then when we're actually faced with the idea of asking ourselves, what is it that we want? What we actually want, that's when the confusion sets in and you start shopping it around to other people and asking other people when in fact that intuition and that desire of what it is that you want has to come from you.
Well, I do know what we're seeking is this. Because our intuition, unlike our outer senses, doesn't get instant validation. We're seeking validation. So it's okay to go to speak with others, but only those who are intuitively oriented and awakened, not those that are shut down. You don't ask the wrong people. One of the reasons my intuition is so strong is I had 6 brothers and sisters and parents who constantly said, trust your vibes. So I had reassurance, validation, encouragement. So I think that it's important to be discerning about who you speak to. And are they going to encourage you to go within, or are they going to distract you, talk to your ego and your insecurities and amplify that?
Right.
So I think it's important to have your believing eyes and your kindred spirits. I even created a group on my own website for that because that's how important it is.
Oh, fantastic.
It's called the Good Vibes Tribe. And it's like where you can go and get the kind of reassurance and validation. And I go on every day. But what a lot of people do is they're not really discerning about who they're asking. So you can ask your parents, for example, who love you, but may have very strong opinions about what you should do with your life that aren't incongruent with who you are. You ask them, they're going to say, do what I want you to do.
Right.
If that's the type of parent you have, maybe you have a different type. But if you have someone who's very fearful, your best friend is always fearful and worried about money, you go to them and say, well, I'm thinking of my intuition says start my own business, they could say, are you crazy?
Yeah.
Who do you think you are? But they are not at all tuned into your experience or who you are. They're just spewing their own fears on you.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is important to surround yourself with validating others. Just pick and choose those who will genuinely support you, not
Yeah.
sabotage you.
Yeah. There are people that I have found in my life as well that will give me messages or confirmation of messages, even if they're not fully in their own personal intuitive power, but they somehow are still connected and able to give me those messages. I find that when you are around the right people, they do deliver the messages for you, whether they realize they're doing it or not.
That's true because we all fall into our own pool and get underwater with our own stuff, but we can maybe look into someone else's pool, especially if our hearts are in the right place and we truly love them and want the best for them. We can be very clear, support people for them with our own guidance. Humans are emotional and resonant beings. So when we share a harmonious vibration, we can provide support and guidance to one another and should. It's just when you're with people who mirror back to you everything you're not. It's like
Yeah.
trying to make the shoe fit, and what they're saying doesn't resonate with you on any level. Doesn't mean that your peer group or your support group have to agree with you, but it has to feel resonant in your heart as someone who's genuinely gets you and is genuinely supportive to you. I do agree. We do need that. It is a crucial part of people who trust their vibes have had some support in their lives to do so, just like
Yeah.
I did. It's a big reason why most people don't trust their vibes is because they don't have and haven't thought to create that support group.
Yeah.
But it can be had. Like I said, it's why I created one because it is a missing piece.
Definitely.
So when you think about the people you go to, if they are what I call your soul family or your kindred spirits, their input is very beneficial.
Yeah.
I think what we're seeking is validation, but we tend to abandon our objective and now we're just looking for approval. So don't ask for approval.
Yeah.
You can say, I'm just sounding this out. Sometimes just speaking out loud what you're intuitively feeling so you can hear your own voice in your own body is all you need.
Or
I always
writing it
ask
down.
people, don't ever ask if your intuition is right, because
Yeah.
then you're up in your head. Ask if it feels true.
So when it comes to following your intuition, and actually, I'm going to preface this by saying there have actually been quite a few people in my life, also clients of mine, including myself over the last, I would say, month or so. The energies have been a little weird, but it's almost as if, we feel like we're being tested. So in other words, we follow the intuition and then nothing happens until like the very, very last second, to the point where you're at the final hour of when the intuition was saying that, okay, this is what you need to do, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen, and then all of a sudden, boom, it just falls into place. And that happened to me with my visa. Actually, I just got my entrepreneur visa for France in August, and it was literally like the last second that it finally went through. And then I had another friend who had almost the exact same experience with her visa, where she was getting on a plane to come back to Europe, and she was going to come without her Spanish visa because she's moving from France to Spain. And it literally came a half hour before she was supposed to leave for the airport. So, we were joking about it. She was like, well, I was following my intuition and everything was going great. And then all of a sudden, like, it just doesn't look like it's happening. And then it happens. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, first of all, I appreciate visa drama because I've had my own fair share.
Right.
And I'm in one now, so it makes me laugh.
Yeah.
What I will say is this: we come to grow, and life is school.
Yeah.
It's school for the soul to grow. And the way we grow is we are asked to pass tests. So I think you're very accurate about, there you will be tested. You will be tested. The outer world will not reflect what you know to be true in your heart. And timing and appearances are going to challenge you and tell you to go back to just believing that what you see is all there is.
Yeah.
So when you want to live an intuitive life, you're obliged to pick your team. You can't just live your intuitive life when it's easy, and then when it gets challenging, you abandon ship. Because you'll just electrocute yourself with your own fears and anxieties.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that you bring this up. You will be tested regularly.
Yeah.
But it'll get easier. You'll recognize, oh, I get this. It's a test. Okay, well, I'm going to choose to go with my intuition anyway.
Yeah.
Because what would be the alternative? I don't get on the plane. I don't go.
Right.
When playing it safe creates a very small world.
It does.
Living an intuitive life, and I love this comes from the word to be intuitive takes courage. And the word courage comes from the French word for heart.
Oh, yeah.
Which is like to live from your heart is a very courageous choice. And it's intuitive people are courageous. They're saying, I'm doing this, whether it makes sense, it looks logical, people approve of me or not. And in my book, Trust Your Vibes, the last chapter of the book is called Dance in the Fire. And it's all about this test. It's about exactly what you're bringing up. The fire is this feels like it's too much and it's dangerous. And I just have to, jump out or jump in. But if you dance in the fire, you learn that nothing scares you when you go with your intuition.
Yeah.
You begin to become fearless. And so, yeah, that is a good part of it. And very few people bring this up. I love that you did.
And it's something that I've gone through many, many times. I mean, I've gone through these types of tests over and over and over again. The really great part is that I have become much more secure over time. So as things progress and I have these tests, I start to think, hey, I know now. This is a test. I know this is a test.
Exactly.
I'm not going to fall for this again. However, I did fall for it when it was my whole visa situation, because that's a huge life thing. That's a really big thing.
Here's the thing, because I get it. I'm in that right now with my own visas, but it's okay to be scared. I always say, you can say I'm afraid, but I'm not in danger. Make a distinction. My ego self is afraid. This is my security. This is my foundation. This is my predictability. It looks like it's being threatened. So I will be scared and still have faith in my intuition.
Right.
So it's a paradox, but that's what it involves when you live an intuitive life.
Yeah. It's something where it's almost like a little battle, an internal battle, because, my heart had been telling me, and actually my angels, everybody had been telling me for a good month and a half to 2 months before I left for the US to go get my visa. Everything's going to be fine. It's going to be, you're going to get it. It's going to be fine. Don't worry. And so I was getting this repeated sign over and over and over again. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll trust it. But then once I got to the US and I had to wait out the 4 weeks or, however long I had to wait, I was in panic, right? So it was this battle between my heart saying, this is going to be fine, and my head going, no, but what if I'm stuck here? What if my cat is in Paris for the rest of his life without me? Those fears that start coming up, and you don't know exactly how to sort of manage that in the moment, because it's that battle that's going on, and you're trying to do the meditation. You're trying to, sink back into your heart. You're trying to do those things. And yeah, it's difficult.
This is where that I'm afraid tool comes in really handy.
That's beautiful. I'll have to try that next time.
Exactly where I'm afraid I won't get my visa. I'm afraid I'll be locked out. I'm afraid I can't show. I will lose my foundation. I'm afraid my whole life will implode. I'm afraid I'm stuck.
Yeah.
And yet my spirit says, my intuition says, I interchange those words, because your intuition means your inner teacher. Your inner guide. That's what the word itself means. So that is your spirit. So my spirit says. And the physical world moves slowly. My daughter in London here, and her husband, he was waiting on getting his PhD approved of, was contingent. His visa was contingent on that. And his person to approve of it went on vacation.
Oh my gosh.
They literally they were running out of time down to the hours. My daughter, who's also very intuitive because she's learned to really listen, pulled up the website of Lawyers to Help in Immigration Emergencies, called 3, 2 said, pack your bags, you got to go before tomorrow. The third said, well, there's a loophole here, and it's that you have a legal right to education. And we can't kick you out based on the fact that your education is still in progress because you haven't finished your PhD. So we have to file a stay. And by the time we get to court, you'll get your PhD approved and your visa's back. And that's exactly what happened. It was like pulling a rabbit out of a hat. And yet, because there's hundreds of immigration attorneys, but the ones were saying, nope, nope, nope. And she found the one who found the loophole. So you learn what you have to do with intuition is use it like a game, and life is the game. And it's gonna give me the advantage in the game, but I've got to be willing to play the game.
Yeah.
I got to put 2 feet in, and I can't play it safe and live it true at the same time. And it takes practice. So start with little non-threatening things like which elevator is coming or where's the parking space. And then you build into where I build my life on this or that visa. It accelerates pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You go from little to big because it's like turning on the light. The light's on. First you see the little thing, then you see the whole room.
Yeah.
But I don't think you should ever plan on intuition eliminating fear. Just recognize fear doesn't eliminate intuition.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
You can be afraid and still your intuition can work very well.
Yeah. Whether or not you actually believe it.
Right.
Is another thing.
And so just say it and let the two sit side by side. I'm afraid of this and my intuition says that.
Yeah.
Let the two coexist out loud, side by side. Listen to what happens in your body. And then it'll all fall into play.
Yeah. Maybe I should ask you. So the tool you just gave us with naming the fears, has that ever not worked?
Nope.
Okay. That was okay. I figured I'd ask that question
Look, there
first.
are others. There are other tools because a lot of people, I tried this tool on a woman. She was interviewing me and she goes, well, what am I supposed to be afraid of? So yeah, this tool can fail if you are so out of touch with yourself, you can't even feel your own feelings. So there's a couple other things that are very important to get your intuitive channel to function. It tells the truth. So you want to be able to hear the truth. And believe it or not, to me, that's the biggest obstacle.
Yeah.
Most people would prefer an alternative reality where, does he love me? Please say yes. Is that my right house? Oh, absolutely, Garen. So that interferes. So don't ask your intuition questions you're not truly available to receiving a response to. That's a very big important because your intuition tells the truth. Now, it's not necessarily an absolute truth as it is a moment-to-moment truth. In other words, life is in motion. There are some absolute truths. Is this the right path for me? Absolutely not. But is this, like you said, is this the right job? Well, there are 2 or 3 or 4, maybe up to 10 different options here. When it's like a momentary truth. This is my right next job. This is my right next relationship. So we have to look at intuition as learning to surf, and it teaches you to ride the waves.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to get on the board and what's the truth. You can't be in denial. A lot of people are super emotionally immature and they just want to hear what they want to hear. And my response to that is, I get it. Don't we all? But denial is certainly no protection.
Right.
Better to have an accurate reflection of what you're dealing with so you can be creative and make good choices. If you're, I only want to hear the good, that means you're not willing to be empowered and make creative choices when things don't go your way.
Well, and oftentimes they don't when you follow your intuition, because I found that there are often some convoluted ways in which you need to either get to, let's say point B, but you're going to take point A, Z,
Exactly.
J, and back to,
right.
So
it's not a guarantee for a pain-free life. It is a guarantee for the most fulfilling growth.
Yes.
In life. So, should I do this or that? The motivation should be for my growth, what is my best next step for my growth? Not just so I have a pain-free experience, but is this the best for my growth? So I always start my day, and I've started my day ever since I was a child saying out loud, Divine Spirit, move me in the direction of my highest good this day. Move me in the direction of my highest ability to serve this day. And that gives my intuition full permission to take over and literally move me in directions, into conversations, into countries, move me.
Right.
Let my intuition override my thinking.
Yeah.
And move me in the direction of my highest good. And it does.
It often looks different than obviously what we would expect. So, how much, I guess, percentage wise, do you put weight on those sort of expectations? Do you go in with no expectations? Do you have some based on what you want to manifest in your life?
Based on the fact that I genuinely and truly have always lived from the intuitive guidance effort, I don't listen to my head too much.
Oh,
I
perfect.
just don't. I teach people not to. I say, look, I call your ego voice your barking dog. And it's like, okay, your barking dog is not your enemy. You don't shoot the dog, you train the dog. You
Yeah.
train the dog to help your spirit, not attack it.
Right.
So I live I'm listening to vibration. I'm not listening to my head. And that's what I feel is the key to really developing powerful intuition, is to recognize you're listening to energy.
Yeah.
You're not listening to conversations in your head. You listen with your whole body to energy and flow. So you quiet your head. And this, I'm afraid of, quiets your head as fast as an hour of meditation. Fear is what is noisy in the head. So name your fears. You can move past them. And then what do you feel? And it's not feel sentimentally, emotionally. It's what do you energetically feel? Does this feel congruent? Does it feel like it's going against the grain? Am I talking too much? Am I trying to make the shoe fit? Does it fit? Does it feel like a match? I mean, those are the kind of words I use when I'm tuning into my intuition.
Yeah. And I find that when I was first learning to tap into my intuition, I found that even if I was not listening to my head, I was focusing on that one intuition. So if I can come up with an analogy, like, you find a pebble in your path and you look at the pebble and you're examining it and you're like, oh, okay, so I get this pebble, I understand it, but you're not seeing the pebbles in front of it and you're just focusing on that one. So what I would do is I would focus on that one intuition that I would get and not go with the flow of what the next pebble would be or what the next intuition would be.
Good point. So what you need to do is remember, intuition is moment to moment, like surfing.
Yeah.
So you take the pedals, okay, that's this wave, but now we're carrying to another wave. So let this one go and catch the next wave. Catch the next wave instead of being fixated on one wave.
Yeah.
And that, if you use the analogy of I'm going wave to wave, let me give you an example. This is a classic example. When I was years ago, when I lived in Chicago, I just was first married. My husband and I were looking for a house, and I found a house, and I said, this is the house I want. It was perfect. It was everything we envisioned. Absolutely the perfect house. Put it in bid, waiting for the closing. And then I said, we have to not buy this house. And he said, what do you mean? I said, something's changed. It was the perfect house when we bid on it, but something's changed. What? I don't know what. Then we started what ultimately ended my marriage, which is, you're crazy, you're nuts. But it's like, I don't care. Now we can't buy this house. And he said, wow, you get us out of it. So I said to the realtor, we can't buy the house. I don't know why. My intuition tells me we can't. And it was a very hot market at the time, so they let us out of it because they thought I was called crazy. We don't want to deal with you. You're crazy. My husband was very angry with me. You put me through this. What are you doing? Crazy. Well, here's what happened. The closing date came and left. That was July 30th. This was in 1985, I believe. Anyway, in August, for the next 75 days, it rained in Chicago. It was very unprecedented. And this house was right on the Chicago River and flooded.
Wow.
So it took me going through the fire of all that resentment and all that hostility and all those name calling. And then even the realtor called me later and said, I don't know how you did it, and you still seem weird to me, but I'm really glad you didn't buy that house.
Wow.
So that's where you let it go moment to moment.
Yeah.
It would have been a catastrophe for us.
Yeah, and it's hard also. Currently, I do Akashic record readings, but in my previous life, I was a designer. And so I would use my intuition for, event planning and designing and all of these things. And I found it very difficult to explain to people, well, no, we can't have the event on that day. Why? Because we can't. Like, I wouldn't
And you
actually
know
be
what?
courageous enough to actually say it.
But here's the thing. I always say, because my intuition tells me, and that is the why.
Yeah.
That's when you're really liberated.
Yeah.
That is the why.
Mm. And then how do you handle that negativity that's coming at you after you stand up and say, no, it's my intuition and this is why I'm making the decision? How did you handle that?
Well, that's why I call it dance in the fire. You got to toughen up. You got to toughen up. You got to say, well, I will, whether it's go against my intuition, which tells me this is a disastrous idea versus go for your approval.
Mm,
I'll go for my intuition. Your approval is overrated. But
yeah.
I honestly have taken, I call it, Native Americans call it snake medicine. When you
Yeah.
get bitten so many times, you become immune.
Okay.
And I have snake medicine now. I've been bitten so many times by people's name calling, and you're crazy, and I don't approve, and you're upsetting me, and what the heck, and that I no longer am affected.
Mm,
But you do have to develop that.
yeah.
You do have to develop that snake medicine. You do have to say, look, and this is why I also think the first commandment is not to have false gods. And to me,
Mm,
a false god is other people's approval.
yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry you're disappointed. And no, I can't explain. I'm not arrogant. I'm very sympathetic that I'm upsetting the boat, but this is what I feel, and I am courageous enough to stand by it.
Yeah.
I've developed that. You have to develop that courage, but the people who do have the most fabulous intuition and are the best creators.
Yeah. It's something that you have to sort of connect to your personal power as well as your trust in yourself. Because if you don't trust in
Absolutely.
yourself and your intuition, then you're not going to be able to stand up for that.
If you don't trust your intuition and you abandon it for others, it'll always backfire. That'll never
Always.
be a good choice. That will
Yeah.
never, ever, ever, ever work out for you.
Yeah.
So I just remind people when they say, well, I'm afraid to trust my intuition. And my question is, well, how's that working out for you?
Mm,
Like, let's do a reality check.
yeah.
Do you like the life you're in? No, I'm not. I'm not in a happy relationship. I don't live in the right place. I'm not doing the job I want. I'm taking a bunch of crap from someone I work for who I'd rather quit. I don't feel good in my body. There's always a consequence because your intuition is the voice of your authentic self. So when you don't listen to it, you are abandoning who you are.
Yeah.
Now, granted, when we're learning to develop our intuition, we have to fine tune what is wishful thinking, what is intuition, what is fear. It's all levels of practice and awareness. But eventually, you hit that chord that okay, this intuition is my absolute self. That's green light. Pause is like, okay, things are in flux. This is the power of the pause. So I'm going to own that. And yes, it puts us in a difficult situation for a moment, but it's too soon to make a decision. And then
Right.
there's red light, which is this is bad for you, no matter how you talk yourself into it. So it really is what it takes to be intuitive is integrity and courage and a lot of backbone because you're going to get a lot of flack.
Yeah. And that's the hard part. Well, it's one of the hard parts, which is to be able to stand in your own personal power and state what it is that you truly know in your heart to be true.
So what I suggest with that, Annette, is instead of saying it's difficult, just say it's different.
Oh, there you go.
And
Yeah,
that just opens up a whole other way to approach this.
absolutely. Let's talk about timing for a second, because I know that that has been probably my biggest Achilles heel over the course of my spiritual awakening process. So, I mean,
Mhm.
I've been, let's say, since 2012 is when I started my spiritual awakening. I think it's maybe started a little bit before then, but it's been probably the better part of 10 years now.
Mhm.
And that is the one thing that it has sort of tripped me up. And it's the test that my intuition gives me over and over again is, am I going to learn this time not to place the timing factor on it? Because, I'll get an intuition and I'm like, okay, got to do this now. When maybe that intuition was given to me because it's something that's coming up in the next week or 2 weeks or month, whatever it happens to be.
Well, again, that's a very good point. Intuition doesn't work in linear time.
Correct.
So we just have to accept that.
Yeah.
That linear time is going to fly in the face of our intuitive knowing. But my experience of 55 years or more is trust that in time it all converges.
Okay.
And that linear time may need to catch up. Now, I'll just say, even when I started teaching intuition, this was 70s. I was a kid. First of all, I was a kid, so that was laughable. And then I'm teaching this, which made me even more of a brunt of a joke. But my intuition said, keep doing this. This is your purpose. Take the crap. Focus on the benefits. Focus not on the difficulties, but the benefits, and keep showing up. Now, all this time later, thank you. Now the whole world's showing up. You were out in the wilderness for a while, but now you have learned to be a really good guide. And all that experience helps people build their confidence. So it took 50 years.
Yeah.
But it did converge. Now it is converging. What this conversation would have been, hush hush when I started out.
Right.
Now it's mainstream.
Yeah.
So we have to just make some peace with a couple of things. Intuition, in terms of timing, is always going to be a problem. Unless you recognize that you just concede that, well, in time, this will make sense. But if you want to get that timing right, I don't know any intuitive people skilled to nail that down, because
not at all.
It doesn't work in the same. It's a different paradigm. It's a different vibrational arc. So it's like, well, intuitively, it's going to happen when eventually, in a way that matters. If I'm registering it now, then it will matter. But I have to let go of the timing. That's the ego trying to control.
Yeah.
Again, I equate it to controlling the ocean. Being an intuitive person is surfing the waves of the ocean and not getting swallowed up.
Right.
So you're not going to control the ocean. You learn the nature of the ocean, but you can learn to surf it really well. You're not going to control it. So if it's timing's an issue, I can't control that. Surrender that.
Do you have any sort of, I guess, advice to help surrender that? Because that is something that I think is ingrained in us, because if you think about what we do in our daily lives, we're constantly on a calendar, we're constantly making appointments, and, we're very, very tied to time as a society.
Well, in fact, I've been saying this particular solution for forever, and to the point that I finally thought, I'm going to make this a book. So what you do, and I just finished it, is write it down.
Yeah.
Write down what your intuition says. So I just created the Trust Your Vibes journal. So write it down, and every day write down, what do my vibes say? And after 2 weeks or 3 weeks, check it.
Okay.
Because then you're going to start having evidence. So you start writing it down. It's name it, you claim it. When you write it down, you put value on it. You're validating it. And so after a few weeks of writing things down every day, just a sentence or two, what does my intuition say? Write it down. After a few weeks, you will see already there is some real legitimacy to this, that your daily mind navigating schedules is going to forget. If you write it down and think, I knew that 3 weeks ago, and here it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I sensed that 2 months ago. Here it is. I felt that yesterday morning. Here it is.
Yeah.
And that's the way to do it.
What if it's something bigger? So meaning that writing down the intuitions that you have on a day-to-day basis, it's a beautiful practice. That's actually how I started to really trust what I was getting, because, you forget, your brain forgets what you get, so.
There is a plan B, and plan B works all the time. And it's what I teach now, because most people are too lazy to write it down.
Yeah.
Speak it out
to
someone, because again, It's keeping it inside that makes it easy to ignore.
Right.
The minute you put it out there, my intuition says, and you actually put it out there, you can't ignore it. I said it. I already mentioned that. So I check with myself daily. I put my hand on my heart and I ask out loud, especially when I'm troubled or anxious, what does my intuition say? And I answer out loud, even if I'm walking down the street by myself. And then I listen and feel what I said. If it doesn't leave me relaxed, that's my head talking. So I'll keep saying, what does my intuition say? And then it'll say, okay, do this, do that, whatever. It's going to work out. Wait, pause. But I'm having a constant outward conversation with my spirit. It works.
I often talk to myself walking down the street and it's fine. It actually works out great because so many people wear earbuds nowadays that it's, it's not weird.
Right. It's okay.
So when it comes down to your fears, I did want to ask one more question about that. So is it necessary, do you feel, with the tool that you gave, is it necessary to really know or understand the origin of those fears?
I don't think you should be interested at all.
Okay.
I think that we overrate understanding anything to think that'll make a difference.
Okay.
We understand a lot of why we're all messed up, for example. We're still all messed up.
Right.
So I don't put a lot of value on understanding much of anything.
Okay.
I just say, just acknowledge it. It's whatever, put that in there. It's an obstacle in my path, and now I need to get past it.
Okay. Wonderful. And lastly, if you don't mind letting people know how they can join your community.
The Good Vibe Tribe, that would be, just go to my website, soniachoquette.net. It's on the front page. You can try it. I come on every single day. It's a very dynamic group. It's constantly supporting people's intuition. Lots of online courses we work together. It's really exciting. So you can just join right homepage, Sonia Choquette.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sonia. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you.
Pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you so much, Annette. All my love.
Love to you as well. I want to thank you for joining me today. And I look forward to walking this journey with you and pointing the way on your spiritual journey. If you are interested in learning more about me and the sessions that I do, feel free to go to my website at infinitesoullove.com. On all social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Infinite Soul Love 1111. Hey, and if you feel called, I would love it if you could rate The Heart of You on whatever streaming service you're using, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Please take a moment, give it a review. It really does help the channel. Thanks so much.